Okay, good evening. As Ada said, my name is Eva Mends, and my project is not really as boring as it sounds from the title. I got involved in this project last year, actually. It was my undergraduate independent research project, and I worked with Dr. Florence Dunkel to develop a project where I would explore the effects of traditional medicinal plants against malaria. And so in collaboration with her, I did a bunch of literature research to try to find what types of plants are commonly used. We traveled to Mali in March of 2007, and I worked in the same village of Sanambele. When we got there, they had already chosen 4 different plants for me to work on. They were called Bari, June, Sinjan, and Kosafine in the Bambara language. So I took those 4 plants and I made both an alcohol extract and a water extract, brought them back here to the lab at the Department of Vet and Molecular Sciences under the direction of Mike White and Maria Jerome, and I've been working in the past year to develop a bioassay system to try to test whether these plants are effective. And unfortunately, I couldn't use the malaria pathogen. We don't have a culture here, but I used a similar organism that's called Toxoplasma gondii. And in the last year, I have found that 2 of these plant samples are effective against this related pathogen, which is really exciting for future research with the malaria pathogen. So in this spring of 2008, I went back to Sanambele to transmit my results to the people in the village that helped me gather these plants and my knowledge of them, and also in support of the secondary school education project out of Helena, and in support of the Art for Malaria, Fighting Malaria project that Alonzo will talk about in just a minute. And the villagers were very excited to hear that these 2 plants were effective. And we also found out in the course of my knowledge gathering that the other 2 plants, one is an anti-nausea and one is an anti-fever agent. So there's some really exciting research to also be gained further from these plants that I have used. So I will now turn things over to Alonzo Antonucci, and his project is Art for Fighting Malaria in Africa.
All right, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It's been a long time in waiting. As Eva said, my project was Art to Fight Malaria. And so I received the opportunity to do this project as a result of attending a class by Ayittey, and she gave me the opportunity to go to Mali. And so through a lot of work that it took, we received some grants and we were able to take our flights to Mali and receive an incredible experience. I created Art to Fight Malaria as a project due to the fact that I've had some talents in my life with art. And I saw maybe a need for it, as there's been much education done with art. And so I said, why not? And so what I did is I worked with the children between the ages of 13 to 17. And believe it or not, this village has what I thought was a pretty good school. Very good instructors, and the children were incredible. And so what I had to do was to first find out what these children knew about malaria and what preventative measures they were actually taking in the village. And through learning through them what preventative measures they were using in the village, I was able to broaden their perspective on other preventative measures. And I was able to learn from them and develop 5 different preventative measures that we could apply into that village. And one, as many of you have heard and probably seen on television, there's a lot going on with bed nets, mosquito nets. And so that was one of the things that the children came up with that we would represent in an art form. And for my art form, for my project, was posters that the children would create. We also came up with the use of using the June and the Bari leaves that Eva just mentioned to make into a medicinal tea to help their immune systems fight off any sicknesses and malaria. As well as something I learned was the fact that they could get rid of a lot of the waste in the village and find any water that was contaminated and try to get rid of that, because that's where mosquitoes will breed and larvae will develop, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually mosquitoes will have the opportunity to pass on malaria, which is not a good thing. They also came up with the ideas of just killing mosquitoes whenever possible. And that was something very good. I didn't think that was a very difficult thing to discover, but they found it, and I was very happy that they did. The other thing was something called BTI, which is a biocontrol that's been used for many years in many different areas of the world to fight malaria. And it's a pesticide, and it can be used in the homes and in water, and it's very safe to use. So I needed to teach them just a little bit about that, educate them, and then we could represent their ideas in art. Upon going to Sanambele, I figured that much of the village had an experience in art. And I soon found out after a couple minutes, none of these children that you'll soon see in these pictures had ever once done a doodle like I've done in school many years while my teachers are talking. As well as the fact that they've never worked on art projects ever in their life. They've never been taught about it. The first thing I did was I passed out crayons and pencils, and soon I got a lot of blank stares looking back at me because they had no idea what to do with it, as there was a piece of paper in front of them. And little by little, helping them put out artistic ideas into their minds, we worked on developing these 5 ideas. They created sketches, and they were soon able to work on these final posters that you see here in groups of 3 or 4. And soon they started working on these ideas, and they came up with incredible projects that you'll soon see. All the colors were very vibrant, and all the children learned a lot. And now we have laminated all these posters so that all the children could take these posters into their homes and educate their families. And now those posters are made into a book, and that book is put into the first library in Sanambele. And so that was my project. And I would like to introduce Megan Madsick and Kelsey Meyer, who will talk about bed nets for Sanambele.